3,200 violent gangs and drug dealers have been taken off the streets. Off the streets. Now, Director Patel and all of these agencies have also been working so hard on getting the leadership. But we are getting all the gang members off the streets and the drug dealers, Sinaloa, CJNG, MS-13, and more, TDA. 91 tons of drugs have been seized as a result of this task force. We try to put this in perspective for you. This would be filling 4 18-wheelers. All the drugs just in the last month that have been taken off the streets. 58,000 kilos of cocaine.
Provide the safest country the nation has ever seen under President Trump's leadership here. And that's what we did here today with great resolve on a case of massive public importance.
Think about a big backyard swimming pool. That would fill 1.5 swimming pools. Just the powder cocaine that has been removed, saving lives this last month, thanks to all of these people around the table. 2,300 kilos of fentanyl powder and 2.1 million fentanyl pills off the streets. And as the president said, more than 1,000 illegal guns.
The Sinaloa Cartel was fighting a civil war in your city, Mayitos versus Chapitos. Two factions battling over El Chapo's empire after El Mayo was betrayed and arrested, and they brought that war to Chicago. For 3 years, they turned your neighborhoods into battlegrounds. They recruited 5,000 Americans, dealers, enforcers, distributors, corrupt cops to fight their war on American soil. They flooded your communities with 4 tons of fentanyl while families buried children lost to overdoses. The FBI just arrested every single one of them in the largest cartel takedown in U.S. history. Secret ledgers, wiretapped cartel commanders, cash warehouses across the city. And something agents found in those safe houses proves this wasn't just drug dealing. This was an invasion. Subscribe to Truth America right now because you need to see what they found. Here's what happened. July 25th, 2024. El Paso, Texas. Ismael El Mayo Zambada, co-founder of the Sinaloa Cartel and one of the most powerful drug traffickers in history, was arrested by U.S. authorities after being allegedly betrayed by Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of El Chapo's sons. El Mayo claimed he'd been lured to what was supposed to be a real estate meeting, then kidnapped and handed over to federal agents. The betrayal ignited a war. El Mayo's faction, the Mayitos, immediately turned against El Chapo's sons, the Chapitos. In Sinaloa, Mexico, violence exploded. Homicides increased 400% in the year following El Mayo's arrest. August 10, 2025 became the single most violent day in Sinaloa state history. 17 homicides in 24 hours, one every 85 minutes. 5. But the war didn't stay in Mexico. Both factions controlled massive distribution networks across the United States. And their most valuable territory was Chicago, the hub through which fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine flowed to the entire Midwest and East Coast. Whoever controlled Chicago controlled billions in drug revenue. Between August 2024 and November 2025, the Sinaloa Civil War turned Chicago into a battlefield. Mayitos-aligned dealers fought Chapitos-aligned distributors for control of neighborhoods, warehouses, and smuggling routes. Drive-by shootings increased 78% in South and West Side neighborhoods. Bodies were found in alleys, parks, and abandoned buildings, casualties of a Mexican cartel war being fought on American streets. Chicago residents didn't know they were caught in the middle of the Sinaloa Cartel's succession crisis. They just knew violence had exploded. What they didn't know, 5,000 people in their city, neighbors, shopkeepers, even police officers, were working for one faction or another, moving drugs, enforcing territory, and killing rivals. The investigation that would dismantle the entire operation began in September 2024 when FBI's Chicago field office noticed patterns in gang violence that didn't match typical territorial disputes. Shootings were too coordinated, victims were connected to specific drug distribution networks, and intercepted communications referenced Mayitos and Chapitos, cartel factions, not Chicago gangs. FBI realized Chicago had become a proxy battleground for the Sinaloa Civil War. Special Agent Marcus Chen led a task force combining FBI, DEA, ICE, and Chicago Police Department resources to map the entire cartel infrastructure in the city. The investigation revealed shocking scope. The Mayitos faction had recruited approximately 2,400 individuals in Chicago. 800 street-level dealers, 340 warehouse workers and transporters, 180 enforcers, and 80 corrupt officials, including 12 Chicago police officers. They controlled distribution on the south side and operated out of 140 locations across Cook County. The Chapitos faction had recruited approximately 2,600 individuals, 2,000 dealers, 380 logistics personnel, 200 enforcers, and 20 corrupt officials. They dominated the west side and ran operations from 200 locations. The two factions were approximately equal in strength, which explained the violent stalemate. Between both factions, the cartels had infiltrated Chicago so deeply that 5,000 people, nearly one of every 540 city residents, were actively working for Sinaloa operations. The scale was unprecedented. FBI obtained federal warrants for wiretaps on suspected cartel coordinators in August 2024. The intercepted communications were chilling. Cartel commanders in Mexico giving orders to enforcers in Chicago, discussions about eliminating rival faction members, coordination of fentanyl shipments totaling tons monthly, and most damning, Chicago police officers on both factions' payrolls providing intelligence on law enforcement operations. Drop a comment below. Should Americans who join Mexican cartels be charged with treason? What's the penalty for bringing cartel wars to U.S. cities? And if you're not subscribed to Truth America yet, hit that button. We expose how cartels are invading American neighborhoods. Subscribe now. Financial analysis revealed the operation's massive scale. Combined, both Sinaloa factions moved an estimated $2.1 billion worth of drugs through Chicago over 3 years. The Mayitos faction averaged $850 million annually. The Chapitos faction averaged $750 million. Chicago wasn't just a distribution point. It was the financial engine of both factions' U.S. operations. In February 2025, President Trump designated both the Sinaloa Cartel and its rival CJNG as foreign terrorist organizations. This changed everything. FBI could now use counterterrorism resources, intelligence tools, and coordination previously reserved for Al-Qaeda or ISIS. The designation meant cartel members weren't just criminals, they were enemy combatants. By September 2025, FBI had identified all 5,000 cartel operatives in Chicago. They had financial records, wiretaps, surveillance footage, seized shipments, and testimony from cooperating witnesses. The evidence filled 340 terabytes of data. Now came the hardest part, arresting 5,000 people simultaneously without tipping off the cartels. November 19, 2025, 4 a.m. FBI tactical teams, DEA agents, ICE operatives, and Chicago police SWAT units positioned across the city for Operation Windy City Takedown, the largest coordinated law enforcement operation in Chicago history. The plan? Arrest 5,000 cartel operatives simultaneously at 340 locations across the metro area in a 6-hour blitz. At precisely 4:17 a.m., raids began. FBI breached warehouses on the south side where Mayitos faction stored drugs. DEA raided apartment complexes on the west side where Chapitos distributors operated. ICE arrested undocumented cartel members at safe houses across the suburbs. Chicago police SWAT teams hit street-level dealing locations in every ward. The coordination was military precision. Every raid team knew their targets, locations, and objectives. Communication was real-time through encrypted channels. And because the operation happened simultaneously, cartel members couldn't warn each other. By the time one location was hit, 339 others were being raided at the same moment. In a Southside warehouse, FBI found 1.8 tons of fentanyl packaged for distribution, enough to produce 900 million lethal doses. The warehouse belonged to the Mayitos faction and supplied the entire Midwest. 12 workers were arrested on site, caught packaging pills stamped with cartel logos. On the west side, DEA raided a Chapitos safe house and discovered 2.2 tons of fentanyl, plus 340 kilograms of cocaine and 180 kilograms of methamphetamine. Total, 2.7 tons of narcotics. The safe house also contained $47 million in cash, assault rifles, and ledgers documenting 3 years of operations. Across Chicago, the raids continued. Dealers arrested in their apartments with drugs and weapons. Warehouse workers caught loading trucks for distribution. Enforcers detained with evidence of murders committed on cartel orders. And 12 Chicago police officers arrested at their homes, corrupt cops who'd provided protection and intelligence to both factions for hundreds of thousands in bribes. By 10 a.m., the operation was complete. FBI had arrested 5,000 individuals, 2,387 Mayitos faction members, 2,613 Chapitos faction members, seized 4 tons of fentanyl, 890 kilograms of other drugs, 1,240 firearms, $127 million in cash, 67 vehicles, and evidence filling 18 semi-trucks. Not one major target escaped. The entire Sinaloa infrastructure in Chicago, built over a decade, fortified during the Civil War, was dismantled in 6 hours. November 20th, 2025. Attorney General Pamela Bondi held a press conference in Chicago alongside FBI Director Christopher Wray, DEA Administrator Ann Milgram, ICE Director Patrick Leckleitner, and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Yesterday, federal law enforcement executed the largest cartel takedown in American history. We arrested 5,000 Sinaloa Cartel operatives who turned Chicago into a battleground for their civil war. For 3 years, Mayitos and Chapitos factions fought each other on American streets while flooding communities with fentanyl. We seized 4 tons of fentanyl, enough to kill every person in America 4 times over. We shut down 340 cartel locations, and we sent a message: Mexican cartel wars will not be fought on U.S. soil. The charges were comprehensive. All 5,000 defendants faced federal charges: conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, drug trafficking, money laundering, and for those involved in violence, murder, and assault charges. Under the new Foreign Terrorist Organization designation, many also faced terrorism-related charges carrying mandatory life sentences. The 12 corrupt Chicago police officers faced additional charges: bribery of public officials, obstruction of justice, and betraying their oath. Mayor Johnson announced all 12 were terminated immediately and would lose pensions. These officers didn't just break the law, they enabled a cartel invasion of our city. They will spend decades in federal prison. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of life sentences under terrorism statutes, 4,200 of the 5,000 defendants accepted plea agreements within 6 months. Street-level dealers received 10 to 25 years. Warehouse workers and transporters got 15 to 30 years. Enforcers involved in violence received 35 to 50 years. The 12 corrupt cops got 25-40 years each. 800 defendants, including top coordinators for both factions, went to trial throughout 2026. Prosecutors presented wiretaps of cartel commanders ordering hits, financial records showing billions in transactions, seized drugs proving the operation's scale, and testimony from cooperating witnesses. Every defendant was convicted. The top Mayitos coordinator in Chicago, a man who'd personally overseen the deaths of 23 rival faction members, received 8 consecutive life sentences. The top Chapitos coordinator got 7 life sentences. Both will die in ADX Florence Supermax prison. All $127 million in seized cash was forfeited and dedicated to addiction treatment programs in Chicago neighborhoods devastated by the fentanyl crisis. The 1,240 seized firearms were destroyed. The 340 cartel locations, homes, warehouses, businesses were seized under asset forfeiture laws. President Trump addressed Operation Windy City Takedown during a speech on border security. The Sinaloa Cartel brought their civil war to Chicago. They recruited 5,000 Americans to fight for them. They poisoned communities with 4 tons of fentanyl, but we arrested every single one of them. This is what happens when cartels think they can invade American cities. We will hunt them down, prosecute them, and imprison them for life. In Sinaloa, Mexico, the civil war continues. But in Chicago, it's over. The Mayitos faction is destroyed, the Chapitos faction is dismantled, and 5,000 people who chose to serve Mexican cartels instead of their own communities will spend decades contemplating that choice in federal prison. If you believe Truth America is essential to exposing how Mexican cartel wars threaten American cities, then like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. Share this with everyone who needs to know how deep cartel infiltration goes in U.S. cities. This is why we exist, to show you the invasions mainstream media won't cover, the wars being fought in your neighborhoods, and the federal operations that fight back. This is Truth America, exposing the enemy within. We'll see you in the next one.